I was already seated when I realized something was very wrong. The music was playing softly. White flowers filled the hall. People were smiling, laughing, taking pictures. It was my son's wedding day. A day I had prayed for. A day I had waited for. But my chair was not with the family. It was not near the front. It was not even close to the aisle. They had seated me near the service area, close to the swinging doors where waiters moved in and out with trays of food. Every time the door opened, warm air and noise rushed in. Plates clinked. Someone laughed too loudly in the back. I sat there alone. Then someone pulled the chair next to me. And when my son looked over, his face went pale. Before I continue, if you enjoy emotional and powerful stories like this, please take a moment to subscribe, like this video, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Also, tell me in the comments which part of the country you are watching from. I love reading your messages and knowing where you are listening from. Now listen carefully. My son froze where he stood. His smile disappeared. His hands tightened. His eyes locked on the person who had just sat beside me, like he had seen a ghost walk into his wedding. The person did not look angry, did not speak, did not even look at him. They simply sat down, calmly. My son swallowed hard. And that was when I knew this wedding was not going to end the way anyone expected. The lights were bright, but suddenly the room felt cold. I looked straight ahead, pretending not to notice the whispers starting around us. People were turning their heads. Some leaned closer. Others stopped smiling. I could feel my heart beating fast, but my face stayed calm. I had learned that long ago. When you have been pushed aside enough times, you learn how to hide your feelings. The wedding planner rushed past, pretending nothing was wrong. The music grew louder, almost like it was trying to cover the tension in the air. My son kept staring. Not at me. At the person beside me. His bride noticed. She leaned toward him and whispered something. He did not answer. His eyes never moved. That was when the memories came rushing back. Because this was not the first time I had been placed where I did not belong. It started months before the wedding. When the plans were first shared, I was excited. I asked simple questions. What color should I wear? Where would I sit? Would I walk in with the family? The answers were always short. We'll see. Don't worry about that. It's already handled. When the invitation arrived, my name was printed small. No +1. No special note. Just a seat number at the bottom. I told myself it was nothing. On the wedding day, I arrived early. I stood near the entrance, watching guests walk in. Families laughed. Mothers hugged their sons. Fathers adjusted ties. No one came to get me. Finally, an usher walked over. He did not smile. Your seat is this way, he said, already turning around. He led me past the front rows, past the family section, past people who barely knew my son. Then he stopped near the service doors. This is it. I opened my mouth to speak, but he was already gone. I sat down slowly. I told myself to stay calm, to not make a scene, to remember this was not my day. But my chest hurt. Then the chair next to me moved. I did not look right away. When I finally turned my head, my breath caught. I never expected to see them here. Not today. Not like this. They sat straight, hands folded, eyes forward. Calm. Quiet. Like they had every right to be there. And maybe they did. That was when my son looked over. And everything changed. His face drained of color. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. His body stiffened like he wanted to run but could not move. The bride followed his gaze. Her smile vanished too. People noticed now. The room buzzed with confusion. I leaned back in my chair and took a slow breath. Because the truth was simple. They tried to hide me near the service area. But they forgot something very important. Some seats. carry secrets. And the person sitting next to me was one my son never wanted to see again. The music stopped. The officiant cleared his throat. And my son took one shaky step forward. Just as the person beside me finally turned their head. That was when the real trouble began. The moment the person beside me turned their head, my son looked away. Fast. Too fast. Like a child caught doing something wrong. The music started again, but it sounded weak now, shaky, like even the speakers could feel the tension. The officiant began to speak, but his words floated past me. No one was really listening anymore. Not my son. Not his bride. Not the people in the first rows who kept glancing back toward the service area. Toward us. The person beside me did not smile. Did not wave. Did not speak. They simply looked at my son once. Then faced forward again. That one look was enough. My son's hands were trembling. I noticed because I knew his hands. I had watched those same hands learn to tie shoes. Hold a pencil. Reach for me when he was scared of the dark. Now those hands could barely hold his own wedding ring. I kept my eyes ahead, but my mind was racing. I knew exactly what he was thinking. Why are they here? Who invited them? What do they know? The bride leaned closer to him again. This time she whispered harder, her lips tight. Who is that? She asked. He shook his head slightly. I'll explain later, he muttered. But his voice cracked. The officiant cleared his throat again and tried to regain control. He spoke about love. About trust. About honesty. The word honesty hung heavy in the air. I almost laughed. Instead, I folded my hands in my lap and sat very still. Because I remembered the day my son told me, some things are better left buried. He was standing in my kitchen then. Wouldn't look me in the eyes. Said it like it was advice. But it was really a warning. The ceremony continued, slowly, painfully. Every vow felt like it took forever. Every pause made the room feel tighter. The person beside me remained calm. Almost peaceful. That scared me more than anger ever could. When the officiant finally said, "You may kiss the bride," the room clapped, but it sounded forced. My son kissed her, but his eyes drifted again. Back to us. His smile did not reach his eyes. After the ceremony, people stood and turned. Some walked past us pretending not to see. Others stared openly now, curiosity burning on their faces. Whispers followed. Who is that? Why are they sitting there? Did you see his face? A woman nearby shook her head and said, "Something's wrong." She was right. The reception began. Music got louder. People tried to act normal again. Drinks were served. Laughter slowly returned. But my son avoided our side of the room. He stayed busy. Too busy. Talking to guests. Laughing too loud. Hugging people he barely knew. Anything to stay away. I watched him from my seat near the service doors. The same place they thought would make me invisible. The person beside me leaned slightly closer. He still runs, they said quietly. Just 4 words. I did not respond. My son finally gathered the courage to walk over. He stopped a few steps away, pretending to check something on his phone. Then he looked up. "Mom," he said. His voice was tight. "Yes." I replied calmly. He glanced at the person beside me, then back at me. "I didn't know they would be here," he said. That was a lie. I could hear it in his voice. The person beside me stood up slowly. My son stepped back without thinking. "I was invited," they said evenly. "Just like everyone else." My son swallowed. "This isn't the place," he said. "Today is not the day." The person tilted their head. "You chose the day," they replied. Silence fell between us. The bride was watching now. Her face was stiff. Her eyes sharp. "What is going on?" she demanded. My son opened his mouth, then closed it again. I stood up. Sit, I told him softly. He looked at me like he didn't recognize my voice. You wanted me quiet, I continued. You wanted me seated where I wouldn't cause trouble. I've done exactly that. People nearby stopped pretending not to listen. You don't get to control everything anymore, the person beside me added. My son's face flushed red now. Please, he whispered. Not here. I looked at him then. Really looked at him. At the man he had become. At the fear in his eyes. At the truth he had tried so hard to hide. This started long before today, I said quietly. And you know it. The bride stepped forward. Someone needs to explain, she said. My son's hands clenched into fists. The person beside me reached into their jacket pocket. Slowly, carefully, and pulled out a folded envelope. My son's breath caught. I recognized that envelope. I had seen it before. Years ago. When he begged me never to mention it again. The person held it up, not opening it yet. Do you want to tell them? They asked my son. Or should I? The room felt like it stopped breathing. My son looked around at the guests. At his bride. At me. Then his eyes locked on the envelope. And I knew right then that whatever was inside it was about to destroy the perfect picture he had built. Because some secrets survive years. But they never survive the truth. And the truth was sitting right next to me, waiting to be read. The envelope stayed in the air, held between two fingers, like it weighed nothing and everything at the same time. My son stared at it as if it might explode. Put that away, he whispered. Please. The music in the room kept playing, but now it sounded far away. Guests nearby had stopped moving. Even the waiters by the service doors slowed down, pretending to arrange trays while listening closely. The bride stepped closer to my son. What is that? She asked. Why are you shaking? My son did not answer her. Instead, he looked at me. Mom, he said, his voice breaking. You knew about this? I met his eyes. I did not look away. Yes, I said. That one word hit him harder than any shout ever could. The person beside me lowered the envelope but did not put it away. You told her to stay quiet, they said. You told her it was for the good of the family. My son clenched his jaw. I was trying to protect everyone. By lying? The bride asked sharply. People were openly staring now. Phones were slowly coming out. Someone whispered, "This is crazy." I felt my chest tighten, but I stayed calm. I had waited too long for this moment to lose control now. Years ago, I began softly. Something happened that was never supposed to come out. My son shook his head. "Mom, stop." But I did not. "You were young," I continued. "You made a choice. And instead of fixing it, you hid it." The bride looked between us. What choice? The person beside me finally spoke again. He signed something he didn't understand. Something he thought would disappear. My son took a step forward. "That is not true." The person unfolded the envelope just a little, enough for my son to see the edge of a document inside. His knees almost gave out. I saw it. The fear. The same fear he had the night he came to my house years ago, pacing the floor, begging me to help him make it go away. He had cried then. Not for what he did, but for what it might cost him. "You said it would ruin your future," I said quietly. "You said no one could ever know." The bride's face went pale. "Know what?" My son turned to her. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I was young," he said finally. "I made a mistake." "That's not an answer," she snapped. The person beside me stepped closer to her. "Ask him who I am," they said. She turned to my son. "Who are they?" Silence. The kind of silence that hurts your ears. "He won't say it," the person continued. "So I will." They took a deep breath. "I am the one who paid the price for his mistake." A gasp rippled through the crowd. My son grabbed his head with both hands. "Stop," he said. "Please stop." But it was too late. The bride backed away from him slowly. "What did you do?" she asked. My son looked at the floor. "I didn't think it would follow me forever." "But it did," I said. "And now it's here." The person beside me placed the envelope gently on the table near us. Inside it was proof. Proof my son had begged me to forget. Proof he had built his life on silence. "I didn't come to ruin your wedding," the person said calmly. "I came because I was invited. And because I'm done being invisible." The bride picked up the envelope with shaking hands. My son lunged forward. "Don't open that." She pulled it away from him. "What's in here?" she demanded. Tears filled his eyes. "Something I can't undo." She looked at him, really looked at him, like she was seeing a stranger for the first time. Around us, guests whispered louder now. No one was pretending anymore. "This is a wedding," someone muttered. "This is a disaster," another replied. The bride slid a finger under the flap of the envelope. My heart pounded. My son reached for her wrist. "Please," he begged. She paused. Then she looked at me. "You knew," she said. "Yes," I answered. "And you still came?" "I came because he is my son," I said. "But the truth deserves a seat too." Her hand trembled. She pulled the paper out just enough to see the first line. Her eyes widened. She looked up at my son, her face hardening. "What else don't I know?" she asked. My son opened his mouth to speak. But before he could say a word, the bride turned toward the crowd and raised the envelope above her head. "I think," she said loudly, "everyone deserves to understand what kind of man I just married." The room erupted in gasps. My son shouted her name. And the paper began to unfold. The paper shook in her hands as she unfolded it. My son reached for it again, panic written all over his face, but she stepped back. The music stopped completely now. Someone near the speakers must have turned it off, or maybe it stopped on its own, like even the sound knew it did not belong here anymore. Every eye in the room was on that paper. The bride scanned the first few lines. Her lips moved as she read silently. Her face drained of color, then flushed red, then went pale again. "This can't be real," she whispered. My son dropped to his knees. Right there on the polished floor. "I was scared," he said, his voice breaking. "I didn't know what else to do." A sharp breath moved through the crowd. The bride looked at him like he was someone she had never met. "You signed this," she said. "You signed away responsibility. You signed your name and walked away." He nodded slowly. "I told myself it was temporary," he said. "I told myself it would disappear." The person beside me stepped forward again. "It didn't disappear," they said. "It followed me every day." The bride's hands tightened around the paper. "All these years," she said, "you let me believe you were honest." My son reached for her dress. "Please. We can talk about this later." She pulled away. "Later," she snapped. "You let me stand in front of everyone and promise my life to you, knowing this?" People were whispering openly now. He lied. That's serious. How could he hide something like that? I felt the weight of every word. The bride turned to me. "Why didn't you stop him?" she asked. I swallowed. "Because he begged me," I said. "And because I thought protecting him was my job." The person beside me shook their head. "Protecting him cost me everything." The bride read more of the paper now. Her hands began to shake harder. "There's more," she said. "There's always more with lies." She looked up at my son. "You didn't just hide this from me. You built your whole life pretending it never happened." My son cried openly now. "I was young. I was selfish. I was afraid." The bride folded the paper slowly. "This wedding," she said quietly, "is built on a lie." A murmur of shock rolled through the room. She turned to the officiant. I need a moment. He nodded, stunned. The bride stepped away from my son and walked toward the service area. Toward me. Toward the person beside me. She stopped in front of us. Tell me everything, she said. The person beside me met her eyes. Years ago, he made a choice that changed my life. He promised responsibility. Then he disappeared. The bride closed her eyes for a moment. And you? She asked me. I watched him run, I said. And I stayed quiet. Tears slid down her cheeks. I trusted him, she whispered. My son crawled forward on his knees. I can fix this, he said desperately. I swear. The person beside me shook their head. Some things can't be fixed. Only faced. The bride turned back to him slowly. Stand up, she said. He did. She looked him straight in the eye. Is there anything else? He hesitated. That hesitation was answer enough. Her face hardened. Take off the ring, she said. Gasps filled the room. He stared at her. What? Take it off. His hands shook as he pulled the ring from his finger. She held out her hand. He placed it in her palm. I can't marry someone I don't know, she said. The crowd was silent now. No whispers. No movement. The bride turned to the guests. I'm sorry, she said. But this ceremony is over. My son let out a broken sound. The bride handed the ring to the officiant and walked away. My son collapsed again. The person beside me exhaled slowly. I didn't want this, they said quietly. I closed my eyes. Because I knew this was only the beginning. Secrets don't just end weddings. They end families. And as my son cried on the floor, I realized something painful and true. The seat near the service area was never meant to hide me. It was meant to put me exactly where the truth could be seen. And the worst part? The paper in that envelope was not the only secret left. Not by a long shot. No one moved for a long moment after she walked away. The sound of her heels faded down the hallway, slow and steady, like she had already made peace with her choice. The doors closed behind her, and the room felt empty, even though it was still full of people. My son stayed on the floor. His shoulders shook as he cried, loud now, no longer trying to hide it. The strong man everyone thought they knew was gone. What was left was a scared boy who had run from his past and finally been caught. Someone whispered, "What happens now?" No one answered. The officiant stood frozen, holding the ring like it was something dangerous. The wedding planner pressed her hands together, panic written all over her face. Guests shifted in their seats, unsure whether to leave or stay, unsure whether they were witnesses or part of something they were never meant to see. I stayed seated. The person beside me stayed standing. "I think I should go," they said quietly. My son looked up fast. "No," he cried. "Please don't leave." The person looked down at him. "You asked me to disappear once," they said. "You don't get to ask that again." My son reached out, grabbing at their pant leg like a child. "I was wrong," he sobbed. "I'll fix it. I swear." The person gently stepped back. "You had years," they said. "Years to fix it." Silence fell again. A man from the front row cleared his throat. Should we leave?" That broke something. People began to stand. Chairs scraped. Conversations started in low, shocked voices. Some guests avoided looking at my son. Others stared openly, like they were trying to understand how everything had fallen apart so fast. The bride's family gathered their things and left together, faces tight with anger and shame. My son's friends followed, whispering. The hall emptied little by little. Soon, only a few people remained. My son, me, and the person beside me. My son pushed himself up slowly and looked at me. "Why didn't you stop this?" he asked, his voice full of pain. I stood up for the first time. "Because stopping it would have meant lying again," I said. He shook his head. You could have warned me. I did, I replied. Years ago. You just didn't listen. He wiped his face with his hands. I trusted you. And I trusted you to do the right thing, I said softly. The person beside me turned toward the exit. I really am sorry, they said, not looking at my son. But I won't carry this alone anymore. They took a step away. That was when my son said it. If you leave, he said hoarsely, I'll tell everyone it's not true. The person stopped. Slowly, they turned back. What did you say? They asked calmly. My son lifted his chin, desperation turning into something darker. I'll say you're lying. I'll say you're trying to ruin my life. My heart dropped. The person stared at him for a long moment. Then they smiled. Not a happy smile. A sad one. I was hoping you wouldn't say that, they said. They reached into their bag and pulled something else out. Not another envelope. A phone. My son's eyes widened. What's that? He asked. Proof, they replied. They tapped the screen once, then held it up. I recorded our conversation from years ago, they said. The night you begged me to stay quiet. My son staggered back like he had been hit. You wouldn't, he whispered. I already did, the person said. And copies exist. My son looked at me. I looked back at him. This time, I did not look away. You did this to yourself, I said. The person slipped the phone back into their bag. I didn't come for revenge, they said. I came for truth. They turned and walked toward the exit. My son sank into a chair, defeated. I watched the person disappear through the doors, knowing their life would never be the same again. Neither would ours. I picked up my purse and walked toward my son. I still love you, I said quietly. But love doesn't mean covering lies. He did not answer. As I reached the doors, I paused. Because just outside, I could hear raised voices. The bride's voice. Angry. Shaking. And another voice with her. A voice that made my stomach tighten. Because it sounded like someone else had just learned the truth too. And they were not taking it quietly. The voices outside grew louder. I stopped with my hand on the door, my heart beating fast. I knew that tone. Anger mixed with shock. Pain mixed with disbelief. I pushed the door open slowly. The hallway was crowded. The bride stood near the wall, her arms crossed tight over her chest. Her face was red, her eyes wet, but her voice was strong. Standing in front of her were two people from her family. One was speaking fast, waving their hands. The other was silent, staring at the floor. And then I saw him. My son's father. He stood a few steps away, frozen, like he had just walked into the wrong room at the worst possible time. What are you doing here? The bride snapped at him. He looked confused. I came to check on him, he said. What happened in there? She laughed, sharp and bitter. What happened? Ask your son. He turned to me. What is she talking about? I took a slow breath. He lied, I said. For years. The bride stepped forward. He hid something big, she said. Something that should have been told long before today. My son's father frowned. About what? She hesitated, then spoke clearly. About a life he walked away from. The words hit him hard. What do you mean? He asked. Before anyone could answer, my son pushed through the doors behind me. His eyes were red. His face looked older somehow. Dad, he said softly. His father turned fully toward him. What did she mean? He demanded. What life? My son opened his mouth, closed it, then looked at me. I said nothing. He sighed, defeated. Years ago, he began, I made a choice. I thought I could erase it. The bride's family member stepped forward. You don't erase people, they said coldly. My son's father stared at him. Tell me the truth, he said. Right now. My son nodded slowly. There is someone out there, he said. Someone I should have taken responsibility for. I didn't. Silence fell. Then, "You what?" his father shouted. The sound echoed down the hallway. "I was scared," my son said again. "I didn't think I was ready." "You were ready to get married today," his father snapped. "But not ready then?" The bride wiped her face. "That's why I walked away," she said. "Because if he can abandon that, he can abandon me." My son reached for her. "Please." She stepped back. "Don't." His father looked like he might collapse. "All these years," he said quietly, "you let me believe you were better than me." That cut deep. My son flinched. "I tried to forget," he whispered. His father shook his head slowly. "You didn't forget. You hid." The hallway filled with heavy silence again. Then the bride's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Her face changed. "What is it?" someone asked. She swallowed. "Someone just sent me something." My son froze. "Who?" She looked up at him. "The same person who sat next to your mother." His breath caught. She turned the phone around. On the screen was a message. "You deserve the full truth. Ask him about the money. Ask him about the second document." My son's father frowned. "What money?" My heart dropped. "Second document." I looked at my son. His face went white. "What second document?" his father demanded. My son shook his head quickly. "There isn't." "Don't lie again," the bride snapped. My son's hands trembled. "There was another paper," he admitted. "Something I signed later." "For what?" his father asked. "To protect myself," my son whispered. The bride stared at him in disbelief. "You protected yourself twice?" Tears streamed down her face again, but her voice was steady. "You didn't just walk away. You planned it." My son sank against the wall. "I didn't think it would come back," he said. "But it did," I said quietly. "And now it's louder." The bride looked at me. "You knew about this too?" I shook my head slowly. "Not this part. That was the truth." My son's father clenched his fists. "Where is that document?" he demanded. My son looked down. "At home," he said. The bride straightened. "Then that's where we're going." My son looked up, shocked. "What?" "I'm not leaving until I see everything," she said. "Every lie. Every paper." My son's father nodded. "I'm coming too." My son looked between them, trapped. I felt a cold chill move through me. Because I knew something they didn't. If they went to that house, they would find more than papers. They would find the last secret my son had buried. And once that door opened, nothing would ever be the same again. The drive to the house felt longer than it ever had before. No one spoke much. The silence inside the car was heavy, thick with thoughts no one wanted to say out loud. The bride sat in the front seat, staring straight ahead, her hands folded tightly in her lap. My son's father drove, his jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscle jumping in his cheek. I sat in the back with my son. He looked small now. Not the confident man who had stood at the altar just hours ago, but a boy again. Scared, cornered, and running out of places to hide. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly, breaking the silence. The bride didn't turn around. "I do," she replied. "I have to know who I almost gave my life to." The car pulled into the driveway. The house looked the same as always. Neat. Calm. Peaceful. It was strange how something so ordinary could hold so many lies inside it. My son hesitated before unlocking the door. His father spoke sharply. "Open it." The door creaked as it swung inward. Inside, everything was clean. Too clean. Like someone had worked very hard to make sure nothing looked out of place. "Where is it?" the bride asked. My son swallowed. "The study." We followed him down the hall. Each step felt heavier than the last. He stopped in front of a closed door. His hand hovered over the knob. Then he opened it. The study smelled like paper and dust. Shelves lined the walls. Files were stacked neatly on the desk. Everything looked organized, controlled, just like the life he tried to build. "Where?" his father asked again. My son walked to a drawer and pulled it open. Inside were folders. He picked one out slowly and placed it on the desk. "This is the second document," he said. The bride stepped forward and opened it. She read silently. Her face changed with every line. "This wasn't just about walking away," she said slowly. "This was about making sure you never had to be found." My son nodded, tears falling freely now. "I didn't want my future ruined," he whispered. His father slammed his hand on the desk. "You ruined it yourself." The bride flipped through more pages. Then she stopped. "There's an address here," she said. My son froze. "What address?" his father asked. She read it out loud. The room went silent. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. Because I recognized it. "That's not just an address," I said quietly. "That's where they live." My son covered his face with his hands. "You knew where they were all this time," the bride said. "You just chose not to go." He nodded. "I was afraid," he said again. The bride laughed bitterly. "You keep saying that like it excuses everything." She closed the folder and set it down. "I'm done," she said. My son looked up fast. "Done with what?" "With lies," she said. "With excuses. With you." She turned to his father. "I can't be part of this family." His father nodded slowly, pain written all over his face. "I understand." My son stood up suddenly. "You're all turning on me." "No," I said softly. "We're finally seeing you." He looked at me, eyes full of anger and hurt. "You brought them here. You let that person sit next to you." I met his gaze. "You put them there long before today." He stepped back, breathing hard. "I can still fix this," he said desperately. "I can go there. I can explain." The bride shook her head. "You don't get to decide when it's time to be brave." She walked toward the door. My son followed. "Please." She stopped and turned. "If you ever want to do the right thing," she said, "do it because it's right, not because you're afraid of being exposed." She left. The front door closed behind her. My son's father stayed behind, looking at his son with deep disappointment. "I raised you better than this," he said quietly. Then he left too. I was alone with my son. He sank into a chair, defeated. "I lost everything," he whispered. I looked at him for a long moment. "No," I said. "You lost control. That's different." He looked up at me, confused. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath. "There is still one thing you don't know," I said. His eyes widened. "What?" I reached into my bag and pulled out something I had kept hidden for years. A letter. His hands began to shake. "What is that?" he asked. "It's something I was asked to give you," I said. "Only if you were ready to face the truth." He stared at it, fear filling his eyes. "I don't want to read it," he whispered. "I placed it on the desk anyway." "Then it will read you," I said quietly. He reached for the letter. And as he opened it, his face drained of color. Because the truth inside it was about to change everything he thought he knew. His hands shook so badly that the paper made a soft rattling sound as he unfolded it. He did not read it right away. He just stared, like he already knew what it would say. "What is it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I did not answer, because this was not my moment anymore. He finally lowered his eyes to the page. The first line stole the air from his lungs. He sat down hard in the chair, like his legs had forgotten how to work. "No," he whispered. "No. This isn't possible." His eyes moved faster now, scanning each word, each sentence. His breathing became uneven, shallow, panicked. I watched his face change. Shock, fear, then something else. Something close to terror. "You knew?" he asked suddenly, looking up at me. "You knew this too?" "I found out later," I said quietly. "After you told me to stay silent." He shook his head, running his hands through his hair. "This changes everything." "That's why it was kept," I replied. "Until you were ready." He laughed suddenly, a sharp, broken sound. "Ready? I wasn't ready for any of this." He went back to the letter. His lips moved as he read the next part. Tears filled his eyes again, but these were different tears. Not the kind that come from being caught. The kind that come from realizing you were wrong about your whole life. "They were there," he said slowly. "All this time." "Yes," I said. "Closer than you think." He looked up at me, eyes wide. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because you didn't want to hear," I said gently. He slammed the letter down on the desk. "This isn't fair." "No," I agreed. "But it is true." He stood up and began pacing the room, breathing hard. "This explains why they never pushed," he said. "Why they stayed quiet." He stopped suddenly. "Oh no," he whispered. "What?" I asked. "They didn't come to the wedding to ruin me," he said slowly. "They came because of this." I nodded. "They came because the truth was already moving," I said. "With or without you." He looked at the letter again. The last paragraph stared back at him. His hands trembled as he read it. When he finished, he dropped into the chair again. "They want to meet," he said. "Yes," I replied. "Soon," he added. "Yes." He buried his face in his hands. "I don't deserve that," he said. "Deserve has nothing to do with it," I said softly. "Responsibility does." He looked up at me, eyes red and tired. "What if they hate me?" "They might," I said honestly. "What if they don't want anything to do with me?" "That's their choice," I said. He swallowed hard. "What if they already know everything?" I held his gaze. "They do." Silence filled the room again. He stood up slowly. "I have to go," he said. "Where?" I asked. "To them," he replied. I nodded. He grabbed his keys, then stopped. "What if I make it worse?" he asked. "You probably will," I said gently. "At first." He let out a shaky breath. "I'm scared," he admitted. "For the first time," I said. "That fear makes sense." He walked toward the door, then paused. "Mom," he said without turning around, "why did you really bring that letter today?" I answered honestly. "Because today was the day your lies ended," I said. "And the day your truth had to begin." He opened the door. But before he could step outside, his phone rang. He froze. Slowly, he pulled it out of his pocket and looked at the screen. His face went completely white. "It's them," he whispered. The call kept ringing. I watched him lift the phone to his ear. And I knew, the moment he answered, nothing would ever be the same again. He did not speak at first. He just stood there, phone pressed to his ear, breathing so quietly I could barely hear it. His eyes were wide, fixed on the wall like he was afraid to move. "Yes," he finally said. "This is me." There was a pause. I could not hear the voice on the other end, but I saw what it did to him. His shoulders dropped. His face softened in a way I had never seen before. I got your message," he said. "About meeting." Another pause. "I understand," he whispered. "I understand why you waited." His hand tightened around the phone. "I don't expect forgiveness," he added quickly. "I just want to listen." I watched him nod slowly, again and again. "Yes," he said. "Tomorrow is fine." He swallowed hard. "I'll come alone." The call ended. He lowered the phone slowly and stared at it like it might start ringing again. They agreed, he said, his voice shaking. They agreed to meet me. I nodded. That's not the same as welcoming you. I know, he replied. But it's more than I deserve. He sat down heavily and buried his face in his hands. I don't know what to say, he admitted. I don't even know where to begin. You begin by telling the truth, I said. All of it. He nodded slowly. Minutes passed in silence. Then he spoke again. I thought if I built a good life, he said, if I became someone people respected, it would cancel out what I did. I did not interrupt. But every time I looked in the mirror, he continued, I knew it was fake. I was always waiting for this day. He looked up at me. I just never thought it would happen at my wedding. I sighed softly. The truth doesn't check calendars. He gave a weak, sad smile. I don't think they hate me, he said. I think that scares me more. Why? I asked. Because if they hated me, he said, I could accept it. But if they don't, then I have to live with what I missed. The weight of that settled between us. I wasn't there, he whispered. Not for birthdays. Not for first words. Not for anything. No, I said gently. You weren't. He wiped his face. I can't fix that. No, I agreed. But you can stop running from it. He stood up slowly. I'm going to tell my father, he said. Everything. Before tomorrow. That's wise, I replied. He hesitated. He may never forgive me. That's his right, I said. He nodded. Then he looked around the room. The house feels different, he said quietly. That's because the lies are gone, I replied. They leave an echo when they go. He picked up the letter again and folded it carefully. I used to think today was the worst day of my life, he said. And now? I asked. Now I think it might be the first honest one. The doorbell rang. Both of us froze. He frowned. I'm not expecting anyone. Neither was I. He walked slowly to the door and opened it. Standing there was his father. His eyes were red. I heard you're meeting them tomorrow, he said quietly. My son nodded. Yes. His father took a deep breath. I'm coming with you, he said. My son looked shocked. Why? Because you shouldn't face this alone, his father replied. And because I have things to say too. My son's eyes filled with tears again. Thank you, he whispered. His father stepped inside and looked at me. You knew, he said. Yes, I replied. But not everything. He nodded. None of us did. The three of us stood there, surrounded by the remains of a day that was supposed to be perfect. Tomorrow would be worse. Tomorrow would be harder. But tomorrow would be real. And as my son sat back down, staring at the phone that had already changed his life, I knew the final truth was still waiting. Not in a letter. Not in a document. But in the eyes of the person he was finally about to face. The morning came too fast. No one slept much that night. The house was quiet, but it was the kind of quiet that presses on your chest. My son sat at the kitchen table before sunrise, staring at nothing, his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee he never drank. His father stood by the window, watching the sky slowly change color. I stayed back. This was not my meeting to lead. When they left, my son paused at the door. I don't know who I'll be when I come back, he said. You'll be honest, I replied. That's enough to start. He nodded and walked out. Hours passed. I cleaned the same counter 3 times. I sat. I stood. I prayed. I worried. Then, just before noon, the door opened. My son stepped inside first. He looked different. Not lighter. Not happier. But real. His father followed quietly. I did not ask questions right away. I waited. My son finally sat down and took a deep breath. They didn't yell, he said. They didn't cry. He swallowed hard. They just looked at me. That broke him. They told me everything, he continued. About the years I missed. About the questions that never got answered. His voice shook. They didn't ask for money. They didn't ask for promises. He looked up at me. They asked for time. Tears filled my eyes. I told them I would give whatever they allow, he said. Even if it's slow. Even if it hurts. He leaned back in the chair, exhausted. I lost a wedding, he said quietly. But I didn't lose my chance to do what's right. His father placed a hand on his shoulder. That's the man you should have been, he said. Be him now. Days passed. The wedding photos were never printed. The hall refunded what it could. The whispers faded. The bride never came back. And that was her right. My son began again. Slowly. Honestly. He showed up when he was allowed. He listened more than he spoke. He stopped explaining himself and started accepting responsibility. And me. I finally stood up for the truth. Even when it cost me comfort. Even when it hurt my heart. Because some seats are not meant to shame you. Some seats are meant to expose what must be faced. They seated me near the service area at my son's wedding, thinking I would stay quiet. But they forgot something important. Truth does not need a front row seat. It only needs the right moment. And when it arrives, no one stays hidden. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another powerful story. Also, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read every single one. Because sometimes, the stories we listen to are the ones we were meant to learn from.